Imagine living with 30, 40, maybe even more people inside the same small community. No bedroom, no locked door, no private apartment, no soundproof walls, and everyone knows everyone. They know who you're attracted to. They know who you're spending time with. They notice when two people suddenly start disappearing together. Now imagine trying to have sex in that world. Where could you possibly go? And more importantly, if everyone knew, why didn't everyone interfere? Because the answer isn't simply that ancient humans found better hiding places. The real answer is much stranger. Privacy may have existed as a social rule long before humans could build private rooms. Today, privacy feels physical. You close your bedroom door, you lock it, the rest of the world disappears. That's so normal that we rarely think about how unusual it actually is. For many ancient communities, living spaces were much shared. People slept near one another, they worked near one another, they ate near one another. Children and adults could occupy the same general living area. So if modern privacy means nobody can see or hear me, ancient privacy may sometimes have meant something different. Everyone knows what's happening, but nobody interferes. And that distinction changes the entire story, because humans don't necessarily need walls to understand that something is private. They need boundaries. Think about modern life. You might see a couple sitting together in a park. They're talking quietly, maybe they're holding hands. You know they're having a private moment, but you don't walk over and demand to know what they're discussing. Why? Nobody needs to explain the rule to you. You simply understand, this isn't my business. Ancient communities could have had similar social boundaries. A couple didn't necessarily need a locked room. They could find a secluded location, wait until others were occupied, move away from the main group, use darkness or natural cover, or simply rely on everyone else understanding that certain moments weren't meant to be observed. And this creates the first surprising realization. Privacy doesn't always mean invisibility. Sometimes it means permission not to be watched. But then another problem appears. What happens when someone doesn't respect that boundary? Because sex isn't only about privacy, it's also about jealousy. Imagine living in a tiny community where you know exactly who is close to whom. There are no dating apps, no private messages, no disappearing into a city where nobody knows you. Your romantic relationships exist inside a social network where everyone knows everyone. If someone becomes attracted to another person's partner, people may notice. If two people become involved, people may notice. If someone feels betrayed, the consequences aren't happening between two anonymous strangers. They're happening between people who may have to cooperate tomorrow, share food with each other, raise children together, protect each other, sleep in the same community, and suddenly something that seems private can become a public problem. This is where ancient relationships become psychologically fascinating. Imagine two people become intimate. Another person is jealous. Now what? There's no dating app to swipe away from the problem, no block button, no easy way to disappear. You may still have to see that person tomorrow and the day after that. In a small community, relationships could affect much more than romance. They could influence trust, alliances, family relationships, childcare, status, and eventually who was responsible for whom. That's why human societies developed rules around relationships. The exact rules varied enormously between cultures and across time, but the basic problem was universal. People had to figure out how intimate relationships fit inside a community, and when everyone is close together, social rules become incredibly important. Now imagine you're not the person involved, you're someone else in the group. You notice two people slipping away together. You probably don't follow them. Why? Because you already understand something. Some things are none of your business. That sounds simple, but psychologically, it's enormous. A community doesn't need walls around every private interaction if its members understand boundaries. In that sense, social rules can create a kind of invisible wall. You can't see it, you can't lock it, but everyone knows it's there, and violating it can have consequences: gossip, disapproval, conflict, loss of trust, or damaged relationships. So before humans could create private architecture, they could create social privacy. But here's where things get even more interesting. Privacy wasn't necessarily the only thing humans needed. They also needed opportunity. Think about how many moments in your day are naturally private. You wake up, someone else is asleep. You leave the house, other people are busy. You walk somewhere alone. You have a few minutes when nobody is paying attention. Ancient humans have those moments too. A person didn't need an entire private building. They needed enough time and distance for other people to be elsewhere, a secluded location, a temporary separation, a moment when the group was occupied. That could be enough. And this is something modern people often misunderstand. We think privacy equals a private room, but humans existed for thousands of years before private rooms became normal, so the human brain had to solve the problem another way. Timing, distance, darkness, social boundaries. Together, those could create something surprisingly close to privacy. But there was another reason privacy mattered: embarrassment. Imagine being watched during something deeply intimate. Your brain doesn't just think this is inconvenient, it can think everyone is going to remember this. And in a small community, that's a serious thought, because reputation matters more when you can't escape the people judging you. Today, if you embarrass yourself in front of strangers, you can walk away. You'll probably never see them again. But imagine embarrassing yourself in front of the same people you depend on every day. They know you, they remember you, they know your family, they may know your partner, they may know your children. That creates enormous pressure to protect your reputation, and this is one reason social expectations around intimate behavior can become powerful. People don't need to be physically forced to follow a rule. Sometimes the fear of social consequences is enough. Now here's the part modern humans rarely consider. We often think privacy is a basic requirement for intimacy, but maybe we've got the relationship backwards. Humans didn't first develop intimacy after they built bedrooms. They formed intimate relationships while living in environments where privacy was extremely limited. The bedroom came later. The psychological need came first. Humans already wanted affection. They already experienced attraction. They already formed bonds. They already became jealous. They already cared about reputation. They already wanted certain moments to belong only to themselves. Architecture simply gave those instincts a better place to exist. In other words, the room didn't create the privacy. The need for privacy created the room. And there's an even deeper twist. Modern humans have more physical privacy than most of our ancestors could have imagined. You can lock your door, close your blinds, turn off your phone, drive somewhere alone, rent an entire apartment. You can make yourself almost completely invisible. But despite all of that, your brain still worries about being watched. You still care who knows about your relationships. You still worry about embarrassment. You still experience jealousy. You still want certain moments to remain yours. The technology changed. The environment changed. But the psychology survived, because the ancient problem wasn't really where can I build a private room. The ancient problem was how do I protect something intimate inside a social world? And humans found multiple answers. Sometimes it was distance, sometimes it was timing, sometimes it was darkness, sometimes it was simply an unspoken agreement, don't interfere, and sometimes it may have been nothing more than knowing that everyone else had private moments too. You respect theirs, they respect yours. That's enough to create a boundary without building a wall. And that's probably the biggest misconception about ancient intimacy. We imagine a world where everyone was constantly watching everyone else, but humans have always been capable of looking away. Sometimes that's what privacy really is, not being invisible, just being left alone. So how did ancient humans have sex without modern privacy? The honest answer is, we can't reconstruct exactly how every ancient community handled intimacy. Human societies were too diverse, and direct evidence about private behavior is extremely limited. But we can understand the larger psychological problem. They didn't need modern bedrooms to experience attraction. They didn't need locks to understand boundaries. They didn't need apartments to create temporary privacy. And they certainly didn't need modern technology to become jealous, embarrassed, protective, or emotionally attached. Those things were already part of being human. The walls came later, and perhaps that's the strangest realization. You probably think privacy begins when you close a door. For your ancestors, privacy may have sometimes begun much earlier, with a glance, a social rule, a secluded place, a moment when nobody was watching, or simply an understanding between humans. This is ours, leave us alone. Because humans didn't invent intimacy when they invented bedrooms. They invented bedrooms because humans had already been searching for intimacy and privacy for thousands of years. And if relationships were complicated when everyone lived together, imagine what happened when ancient humans had to deal with jealousy, betrayal, and competition when there was nowhere to hide.